Today I'd like to welcome Simon Welsh, Performance Poet, to Food for Thought. Thanks for coming on the show today, Simon.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Simon's one of the residents in a village called Balcombe in West Sussex in the UK that's actually been subjected to fracking. Recently our government lifted the moratorium on fracking in the UK that has been imposed due to seismic activity that actually happened previously in Lancashire. So Simon, can you tell me what exactly is happening in Balcombe at the moment?
Right now, I would say it's a massive party. At 11 o'clock this morning, 120 Balcombe residents amassed on a playing field in the centre of the village, and we walked down to meet the protesters. The media have been doing some quite interesting and clever things with the stories that they've been spinning on what's going on in our village. A lot of the stories about the arrests. A lot of the focus has been that the only people who've been arrested are the crusty hippies that, specialise in protests and in getting arrested, and that the people of Balcombe don't really care. That's not true. It's never been true. There was a meeting in Balcombe probably 18 months ago when the then CEO of Quadrilla came to Balcombe to the Victory Hall to talk to residents about their proposals for fracking in our community. What he didn't know was that a chap called Will Cottrell, who is the chairman of Brighton's is it Brighton's Free Energy Initiative? Brighton's Green Energy Initiative? I think it's Green Energy. He was there as well, and he had excerpts from the award-winning film Gasland to show to the Balcombe residents before the chap from Quadrilla could talk about how harmless it was. And that was 18 months ago. So by the time this guy was ready to start speaking, people in the audience were spitting blood and wanted Q&A before his discussion. It took a long time to rein everybody in, and he said his bit, and then we all asked questions, none of which were satisfactorily answered. So what's been going on over the last couple of weeks is that people have been getting arrested, and the trouble with the arrests is that when someone gets arrested, they get banned from the site. Right. Which means that they can't carry on camping there. 30 hardcore protesters have been arrested over the last 2 weeks, which means that the crew on the ground who camp overnights and hold the fort is quite thin. Okay. There is a farmer who owns the field directly behind the hedge where people are camped, who in the last 3 days has taken to spraying manure through the hedges onto people's tents. And last night, I believe, he was letting off a shotgun once an hour, every hour, all through the night to scare the stuffing out of everybody. It's very interesting to see what's going on here.
Is this the person who's permitted the drilling on their land then?
No, not at all. I mean, Balcombe Estate, the chap who's permitted the drilling on his land, I believe, is a chap called Simon Greenwood. The Greenwoods own the Balcombe Estate, which is I think at least 1,500 acres over Balcombe. It's probably more like 2,000 or 3,000 acres. I'm not sure. No, this farmer is just a guy who probably doesn't like hippies and doesn't understand fracking and doesn't understand that the people protesting are not just hippies or what fracking really does. Quadrilla are hiding behind the illusion that they're not actually fracking, which of course is true. They're just drilling an exploratory well at the moment. But the thing is, if you look at the equipment they have and the amount of man hours they have to put in, I mean, we already know that they've spent something like £100 million in Lancashire, and they had to have their operations frozen because they caused 2 earthquakes and 90 minor tremors. So they've lost a lot of money already. But this, as far as I can tell, is dirty right the way from the inside out. You've got Lord Brown, the ex-BP Lord Brown. Mm-hmm. He's the chairman of Quadrilla. He's also one of the directors of the venture capital company that funds Quadrilla. And he is the lead non-executive within the Cabinet Office advising the government on how to move forward with businesses like Quadrilla in order to live into a sustainable energy future. And when I say sustainable, I'm not talking about clean fuels. I'm talking about an agenda that they have to move us into a nuclear age and have gas as the 40-year crossover platform between the end of fossil fuels and the beginning of nuclear. Now, because nuclear isn't even really being talked about, no one's protesting it right now, but I'm sure a lot of people do not want us to go into nuclear energy when we know there are an awful lot of free energies out there which could be harnessed and used. But I don't want to talk too much about that. We could get bogged down with my opinions about Tesla's research and, conspiracy theories, and I don't want to sound like a fruit.
So, the Francis Egan, who's the he's the chief executive of Quadrilla. Basically, he said he could understand that people were concerned, but pointed out that the two tremors triggered in April and May last year were not major events. Now, the government's also put in place controls that lead to a requirement to carry out seismic surveys before the work starts, and those firms involved, like Quadrilla, must also draw up plans showing how the seismic risks will be limited and monitor this activity of the seismic activity during and after the exploration. You have the reassurance from both the effectively the chief exec and what is effectively the government controls. So what are you worrying about?
Well, okay, you say that we have the assurance. If they believed in their own assurance, I would like to know why they bought out a very small operation called Balcombe Resources, turned the name of that into Quadrilla Balcombe Resources Limited, and now makes that small company, which, by the way, is only worth £12,000, responsible for all of Balcombe's fracking activities. If they screw up, which they know they might, because ultimately, they can put precautions in place, of course they can, but they don't really know what they're dealing with. So even with their experts, it's only ever going to be their best guess. Fracking is still in its infancy, and we can see that by the amount of mistakes they've made in America. They did all these things in America to guarantee safety, but when it came to people being able to set fire to their tap water and animals dying all over the place and land dying and crops being mutated and God knows what else, the fracking companies there basically went along the path of, unless you can prove that all these horrible things that are happening to your land and your health can be directly linked to the activities that we are doing with fracking, you haven't got a case. And when you consider that they've got trillions of dollars at their resources for corporate lawyers, and Joe Bloggs in his little farm has probably not even got a pot to go to the toilet in. I mean, that's one of the reasons that a lot of these farmers in America leased their land for fracking. Already they were struggling because with the supermarket industry, farmers find it very, very difficult to compete in the marketplace anymore. So the frackers come along and say, hey, we'll lease your land off you. It's still your land. We'll pay you a rent. We'll do exploration. If we find gas, we'll give you a percentage of that as well. And you can keep your farm. Brilliant. What's to lose? And then suddenly they're setting their tap water on fire. It's coming out grey and cloudy. It tastes wrong. People's immune systems start breaking down. All sorts of ugly things are happening. People are getting sick, really sick, There was one part in the Gasland documentary where a family was given a massive water tank by the fracking company, even though that fracking company was saying, we are nothing to do with your poisoned water, but we do feel for you. So we're going to give you all this free water and we'll fill your tank up whenever you need it filled up. Just don't talk to the media about this. So here you've got Quadrilla, and I'm not saying Quadrilla are responsible for these activities, but your question was, what are you worried about? My initial answer was, I'm worried about the fact that they are shielding themselves financially by creating a £12,000 only value limited company that will be fully financially responsible if anything goes wrong in Balcombe. If it turns out that something goes wrong and millions of pounds needs to be paid out, they've got a glass ceiling where they could just say, well, we can give you 12 grand, but after that, we're going to sort of have to fold the company. And of course, the parent company isn't financially responsible. If they trusted their own thoughts, they would keep the gate wide open between the Quadrilla parent and the potential damages that would be required to pay off Balcombe if they destroy our village.
It's very interesting. I don't know if you read in the news, but there's been a 7-year-old had a gagging order placed against them because the family were given a payout of about $750,000 in the States due to their health being affected by fracking. Effectively, they were paid out so they could move house, and they've been placed with a gagging order, which also includes the children, and that includes a 7-year-old. So that's come into the news just recently.
Right. Did I answer your question on that? What am I concerned about if they're saying it's all safe?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. Now, what else did you learn from Gasland as a community?
Oh, when you say as a community, are you talking about our community or the community within Gasland?
So when you were watching Gasland, what did you actually realise when you were watching it?
To be honest, nothing I didn't already know, but it cemented a lot of my beliefs about corporations. You see, I don't know if you know the history of corporations and how they came about. Do you know that?
Yes.
Okay, so, back in the 18 and 1900s, early 1900s, corporations were basically when groups of men primarily got together, like, for example, a group of men who were all different types of builder. Might get together and then make a proposal as a cooperation to the council or the government and say, we'd like to offer to build a bridge across this river for cars. And they would all group together. Then in the early 1900s, it might have been as late as the 1930s. I'm a bit weak on my history here, so don't quote me. When there was a lot of black people suddenly in America, and it was the end of slavery. The only reason blacks were in America in the first place is because they'd been kidnapped from Africa, to become slaves, and suddenly there was this potential for equal rights. I think it was at Christmas time, or it was either Christmas or it was Thanksgiving. Congress was almost empty because everyone was on holiday, and it was that weekend that a new law was being passed to give black people the same rights as white people. And the law was written as, it is legal for any person, this was the original wording of the document, for any person to be able to buy, to sell, to own land, and to have a bank account. And that weekend, a very quiet, small group of corporate lawyers went in and said, could you change that wording so that instead of person, it reads body? Any body can own, buy, sell land, have a bank account. Because a corporation, of course, is a body of people. And if you're going to grant these rights to blacks, you ought to grant them to corporations too. So they did. And I'm sure that judge was paid a lot of money. And what that then meant was that corporations could operate just the same way that individuals do without having the same accountability. Because if a corporation breaks the law, they can't go to prison. You can't put a corporation in prison, nor can you hold any individual responsible for the actions of a corporation unless those actions can be traced to a particular individual. And that means, therefore, that the only damages corporations ever have to worry about are financial. And what that means is that if they see financial damages are going to have to be paid because they're sued for something, as long as the amount of money they make vastly outweighs the money they know they're going to have to pay off, they'll do it anyway. And that's terrifying.
It is indeed. Corporate law.
That's corporate law, and corporate law gives the rights to corporations that are honoured by individuals without any of the accountability. Corporations also all have in their standard internal charter that primary objective number one of the corporation is to increase value of stakes for shareholders year upon year upon year, precluding any other issues. Which means that if you took an individual and gave that same set of statistics to an individual, you'd say, well, that person has no social accountability and no emotions. What does that individual then be? That's psychopathic behaviour.
Yep.
By the standards of the like psychiatry and psychology trade, if you take the actions of a corporation and account them to an individual, that individual would be a psychopath. Mm-hmm. And corporations are protected by the law, and Quadrilla is one of these corporations with a CEO who also, as we said, is the venture capitalist and the cabinet advisor.
So effectively, we have people sitting by the side of our government influencing key policies and legislation that are affecting our futures.
Yes, we do. And those people stand to make vast amounts of money. There is trillions of pounds worth of natural gas beneath British soil. That is a fact.
Yeah.
It's also a fact that by dislodging it, naturally radioactive materials are disturbed and come up to the surface. It's also true that when they pump their fracking liquids down, they go down to the bottom of the drilling well, and then they go out in lots of different directions because they drill horizontally once they get to the bottom in lots of different directions, like spiders' legs, very deep under the ground, sometimes as far down as 7,000 feet. And they can only extract around 70% of the fracking liquid, which is a mixture of millions of litres of water, millions, and a list of chemicals that would make your skin crawl. So what happens to the other 30%? Well, they claim it just sits down there, but they're pumping that liquid down at incredibly high pressure. It's the high pressure pumping that caused those earthquakes and that seismic activity in Lancashire. It doesn't just fracture the rock, it can split the casing of the pipework quite easily. And if you can imagine going down 7,000 feet and then along 2.5 miles under the ground in a pipe that is probably barely wide enough to fit, I don't know, one or two human beings. I don't know. No one's going to go down there and fix that. It's down, it's done. So it leaks. It leaks out into the surrounding area. And what's there? Well, we've got a reservoir right on the edge of our fracking site. I mean, it's, as far as I'm concerned, it's unthinkable. But it still seems to be continuing to go on. But today was a real turning point. A real turning point. I went up and met with other residents at this playing field, and I produced the new anti-fracking national anthem, which I wrote about a week ago and have been practicing and trying to work out how to seed into the collective. So what I did was I took William Blake's wonderful hymn, you know, and did those feet in ancient times, yes. Walk upon England's pastures green. And we've rewritten the words, and now it's all about fracking. Yesterday, I was down at the site, and all the protesters there, we rehearsed it together, and we sang it, and I left them 50 sheets. Today, we had a practice run with all the residents. And when we walked down the lovely little paths and the back ways in Balcombe through the fields and the woods, across the railway line, onto the main road, up to the fracking site. We stopped just before we entered the site until we could all regroup. And a lot of the residents were, you know, in their 60s and 70s, and they wanted to come and support and to meet the protesters. A lot of the news have been saying that the local people are scared of the protesters. They're not. That's just simply not true. They were potentially scared of the police. I'm not saying the police have had a bad hand in this. They've got a really difficult job, the police. Really difficult. A lot of the more militant protesters are quite vitriolic towards the police. Shame on you! Shame on you! How do you sleep at night? But the truth is that the police, once they adorn their uniforms, they have to uphold the law.
Well, it's corporate law that they uphold.
No, it's not. It's just standard law, which includes corporate law, but they're not upholding corporate law and not, you know, human law. If 16 protesters superglue themselves together or lock their arms against a gate and they are blocking a private entrance where the corporation legally is allowed to take their trucks in and out, we are breaking the law. They are not. Unfortunately, that is fact. And as a protester, I am totally happy to put my hands up and say, yes, I admit that is true. That is why I have sympathy and empathy for the police. Because I have met some of these police officers, men and women, and they are incredibly nice. Some of them are not so nice, but then some of the protesters are also not so nice. So, you know, glass houses and stones and all that, they're doing a really fine job. They don't want any trouble. They're just trying to make sure that no one gets hurt. That's genuinely what they are doing there.
So what's the planning permission that Quadrilla have actually got?
As far as I know, they've got something called a mining waste permit.
Okay.
They haven't got a license, and that includes a license to drill.
Yes.
Now, it doesn't include a license to frack, which means that once they finish drilling, they are and doing their exploration, they're going to have to apply for another license to frack. But I did hear something rather unpleasant today, and I don't know if it's true or not, but apparently they can start pumping liquids down there in a particular fashion that doesn't class as fracking, that still falls into the remit of the mining waste permit that they've already got. That concerns me greatly. But, as soon as information comes to the fore like that, it's pounced on by all sorts of people, Balcombe residents, we've got lawyers, we've got solicitors, people know people, and everyone's pulling in their resources to have contracts looked at, combed over, with a fine tooth comb. But today was really sensational. Everyone started singing the anthem from the village as we walked in. Everyone on site started singing the anthem at the same time to welcome them. And by the time we all got together, there was about 300 people on site, TV cameras everywhere, and lots of people crying with joy of the feeling of solidarity and togetherness. It was exquisite.
So how many sites are they going to be drilling in total in the area?
Well, I believe that they have plans for something like 37,000 wells just in Sussex. You can fit 10 into the fields that they've got going there. I think they could put 10 drills in that one little area. I don't know if it's 37,000. That was a figure I got, but I can't remember where I got it. I don't know if it's credible, but we're talking about tens of thousands anyway, just in Sussex. And I know for a fact, and this is correct data, that they have 167, I think, like provisional mining waste permits granted for all over England. Wow. Right, so this battle that we're having here is just about to start in many, many other places.
I was going to say, because you're one of just a growing movement of people, basically, against this this way of extracting energy.
Yeah.
Which is almost intent on destroying the locality.
Yes, but if you are a conspiracy theorist, it makes total sense. What better for the super elite than if regular people could only buy bottled water, could never grow any of their own food? Perfect. We've got them where we want them, and now they can't complain, because if we do, we just cut them off.
And it is interesting when you were talking about the amount of water it's using, because it depends on what type of bed that they're going into, if it's shale or coal, for instance. So it can be anything between 50,000 to 250,000 gallons for the coal beds, but then it can go up to millions, up to 8 million gallons for the shale formations.
Yes, that's right.
It's just absolutely phenomenal. And because they use the wells more than once, so on average, those wells can be using anything individually up to 2 to 4 million gallons of water.
I mean, if we live in a country where they put hose pipe bans on our gardens as soon as it starts to get hot, where are they going to get the water from their fracking?
Absolutely. It becomes really interesting, doesn't it, in regards to where their focus is not about clean water for ourselves, but about industry again.
Yes. Absolutely. And they would argue the opposite. They would say, yes, it may be about industry, but we do not want to live in a society that has no power. We are running out of oil, blah, 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 blah. We have to move into a nuclear age, and fracking and using natural gas, and coal bed methane is an excellent way to cushion us between the crossover from the end of oil to the beginning of nuclear. The thing is, if you read up on free energy, Nikola Tesla, over 100 years ago, was working on, he built a device that could tap directly into the ether, which effectively is dark matter, the space just outside of three-dimensional space-time. It's just outside of the electromagnetic spectrum, but it scientifically exists, and yank indefinite, abundant amounts of clean energy straight out of that through transformers and charge up vast batteries. He also designed a facility that could send that energy, once it was stored in a battery, as data, as digital data, virtually. It wasn't digital then, it was through AC/DC, but it was able to radio transmit that data anywhere in the world to a receiving device that would then fill with the energy that had been extracted from the ether. Tesla presented his findings to the Rockefeller Institute, who were funding his research at the time. And do you know what they did?
Go on.
They burnt down his laboratories. They fired him. They discredited him, and then they gave the discovery of AC/DC and the radio to Edison, who everyone's heard of.
Yeah,
And it was only just before the end of his life that he got that recredited to him. But a lot of people still don't remember that. And all his patents were seized and taken away and locked up, and no one has seen them since. There is a community in the US, I can't remember where they're based, but they are about 300 families. They're a religious community, they're a Christian community, and one chap there managed to reverse engineer what he could get of Tesla's data from the internet and other places, and maybe some of his own intuitive research as well, enough that they have a small box that's I think the size of a small desk that powers at all times all the electricity needed by the community. They are not plugged into the mainstream grid. It works. And the CIA and the FBI descended on them and said, right, you're a God-fearing people. As long as you don't put patents out for this device, we will let you keep it. And that's been going on for the last 40 years, quietly. So they know about free energy. A lot of people are scathing of it and say it's not true and it doesn't exist, but it does. And as far as I'm concerned, the reason that they destroyed Tesla's name, discredited him, brought shame on him, intimidated him, and took away his patents is because it was then, right at the beginning of the 1900s, that they were just working out that if they gridded everybody up, they could charge them utility bills so that people would have to pay more just to live. And that takes us back to this concept that the human being is the only creature on planet Earth that has to pay to live. We pay for water. It falls out of the sky. It comes out of the ground. Why do we pay for it? We didn't used to. And now they're saying they want to use it all for fracking, even though we seem to be in a shortage. Well, I think we're on the edge of free energy, but it's going to take a revolution, because if we get this data and this energy released to us, if it comes into the public domain, the oil industry will fall apart. And if the oil industry falls apart, the military will also fall apart. War will stop. All sorts of things will happen. But we are on the precipice now of being able to move into an entirely new way of being human on this planet. And there are powers out there that do not want that to happen, because at the moment, the purse runs the world, money runs the world, and they operate the purse strings, and they enjoy being in power and making the rules. Now, for me, fracking is linked to all of that, which is why I'm so passionate about this. Because this is just a demonstration of one of the ways that they are looking to put us in a position where we actually can't be self-sustainable.
Mm-hmm. Well, fundamentally, self-sufficiency then buys you out of a system where they have control of you.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I would like to say that I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I try to be a conspiracy factualist. But I'm not happy with the state of the world. We don't have to have starvation. We don't have to have hunger. I was in a Tesco once about 3 years ago, and I was watching a young Tesco employee taking a whole lot of sandwiches off the shelf. They all had discount labels on them, but they hadn't been sold, so he was just chucking them into a black bag. And I said, what are you going to do with those sandwiches? And he said, oh, we're going to chuck them away. And I said, oh, God, there's a homeless guy sitting right outside your shop. Why are you throwing them away when they're still good till the end of the day? They're probably good tomorrow. And I thought he was going to give some stupid Tesco employee type answer. Oh, it's not my job, it's not my problem. I have to say, I judged him, and I shouldn't have done. I underestimated him. He turned around, he smiled at me. And he said, you know how money works, right? And I said, yeah. And he said, so in order to keep a value attached to the produce that's on the shelf, we have to destroy the produce that we would otherwise give away for free. Because if we were to give the abundance away for free, it decreases the value of what's left on the shelf. So instead we call it excess and we destroy it. And it's dark and I don't like my job, and here we are. And I was like, wow. I can't take him out for a drink. But, you know, a lot of people know that the systems that we live in are very strange and unusual, and are not designed to serve the many.
No.
So
Francis Egan basically has insisted that fracking can be done safely and sensibly in Britain, and there are huge reserves to be exploited, and that it has the potential to create jobs, generate tax revenues, and reduce our reliance on imported gas and improve the balance of our payments. Doesn't that help towards an economic future?
I think that all those statements are true, and I think it does help move us towards an economic future if what we want is an economic future. But the economy is based on the buying and selling of goods and the transferring of money. And I would like to think about a future that is not based on the economy, but that it is based on human expression, on creativity, on symbiosis rather than competition. The economy needs competition in order to survive. And competition is the concept where you need to do exactly the same as what the person next to you is doing, but a little bit better in order to be more appealing in the marketplace, right? Now, when there are so many things that need to be done, why are we wasting our time doing identical things to the person next door and just trying to one-up them? What a waste. What a waste of human talent. What a waste of creativity. What a waste of free thinking and expression outside the box. What a ceiling to put on the idea that we could actually discover things that we've never done before and see things that we've never seen before and start living in new ways that we've never lived before. Competition is a very destructive tool. Symbiosis is the polar opposite to competition. Symbiosis is the idea that the individual serves themselves. They think of themselves first. I mean, I'm not a particularly biblical person. I do believe in a greater force than us. But I think it's better described often through Star Wars, talking about the Force, than it is through the Bible talking about God, because the Bible has an awful lot of stuff in it that is about control rather than about the essence of life force that runs through everything. And within the context of that, I think it was Jesus who said you've got to take the plank of wood out of your own eye before you can take a splinter out of somebody else's. And that concept is what I draw from when I think about symbiosis. Symbiosis is the idea that if a person is going to serve the world, they must serve their own individual needs first. So in a sense, I guess we're talking about selfishness. But symbiotic behavior means that selfishness doesn't damage the surrounding environment, it supports it. So for example, if we look at the animal kingdom, a squirrel is digging around and it finds a nut and it thinks, oh, yummy, I'll eat that nut. So it eats the nut. And then a little while later in the forest, it decides it needs to go to the toilet. Now, when the squirrel is thinking it needs to go to the toilet, it is absolutely not thinking any further than that. And it just goes to the toilet wherever it feels like it. That, in terms of a human did that, you would potentially say that's selfish. That person is just thinking of themselves. But in the context of symbiosis, the feces combined with the nut and the earth means that that nut that comes out, or the seed, is going to turn into a tree. And that is symbiotic behavior. And if humans move away from the economy and away from a competitive way of meeting one another in the marketplace into a symbiotic way of being, we will all serve ourselves, and the way we self-serve will automatically serve the surrounding environment. That is the model that I would like to see implemented in place of the economy that runs on money, which isn't even linked to a gold standard anymore. They just make it up. They just print it. And then they constrict it and they expand it, depending on whether they want the market to rise or fall.
Indeed.
Every crash that has ever happened has been engineered by the World Bank or the International Monetary Fund. And once the crash happened, the incredibly rich people who were part of that happening bought up lots of things that had once had a financial value, and now you can pick up pennies on the pound. And then the marketplace increases again, and more of the physical wealth on our planet is in the hands of the few. And they've done that time and time and again until they own almost everything.
So in effect, this isn't just about fracking as an argument. This is a much wider argument.
This is about the future of the planet, I think.
Yeah.
And the future of being human on the planet. And as far as I can see, there are two choices. One, there is a super elite, a one world government, a one set of rules and law, a single currency, which will probably be related to a ID card or a microchip or a retinal scanner. Step out of line and they switch off your ID digitally, and then when you go up to that machine, put the back of your hand up against it because you've been chipped, it won't work anymore. It's very 1984, it's very Orwellian, I know, and it's very sensationalist. But if we look at what's happened in recent history, they are absolutely trying it in different ways. You can see it, it's there, the data is there. The other way forward is for the people who are currently spending money on war, and and the military, we're talking about vast amounts of money being spent, more than we could possibly imagine. To spend that money, there's a Japanese organisation. I saw a documentary on YouTube. They built these sort of vats. They're made of metal. They're circular. They're disc-like, and they have tiers on them. And in each tier, there are a series in a circle around the edge, in a sort of ring, of very strange-looking plants that they have, I think, engineered. I think the plants have potentially been genetically modified or something. I can't remember. They might just be natural. But the idea is they fill this vat with the plants have got all their roots going into it with horrible, crappy, oily, gloopy water from some oil spill in the sea. The plants thrive. They gobble up the oil. They convert it with other things using photosynthesis and whatnot. And what comes out is completely clean water. Right? They could set these up massive all over the oceans. And in 10 years, we would have completely clean oceans and loads of fish. Why aren't they doing it? If you look at the big outfits that come out of Asia, that come out of the US even, and England, who have built absolutely beautiful models for sustainability and reversing some of the damage we've done on this planet, all they're looking for is funding and patenting. They can't get either. I have a friend who whose name I won't mention. She did a degree in molecular genetics and biotechnology. So she was messing around with DNA, not human DNA. And she told me that at the university she was at, a pharmaceutical expert came in to talk to them. It was a closed meeting. It was not logged on any of the university campus catalogues at all, nowhere. It wasn't recorded, so it would always be disappeared afterwards. And he was basically the equivalent of the kind of lawyer who comes in to a group of law students to tell them about the kind of things they need to do to be more appealing in the marketplace to get a job with a good law firm after they leave uni, right? And someone put their hand up and said, oh, I'm working on creating a cure for cancer. And someone else said, oh, I'm doing a vaccine for HIV. And this man, I believe, though from me, you'll have to say it's hearsay, said, we don't want the cure for cancer. We already have it. We do not want a vaccine for HIV. We already have that too. Tell me, my young genii, if we create a one-hit wonder that somebody needs to take once and then they are cured forever, they won't need to buy it again. If that happens, where will our funding come from? We don't want you to cure people. We want you to keep people in a cured state, so long as they are taking the medication. Am I clear? And that was the point at which my friend decided she didn't want to do her degree anymore. She also designed a very splendid, this was, I think this might even have been a colleague of hers, a chap, a seed that could live in saline soil, that could work on salty earth, and its byproduct would actually bring that soil out of a salty state. A pharmaceutical company approached the university that he was at, I don't know where it was in the UK, I think, to buy the recipe, the genetic recipe for the seed in order to patent it, because obviously when you create something new, patent is crucial. Ownership. Sorry. the director of the course, I guess, took him aside and said, right, this pharmaceutical outfit are wanting to give us £4 million. £2 million will go to the university funding for the new laboratories and whatnot that we want to build. And the other £2 million will go to you for your next project, young man. What do you think of that? And he's like, oh, that sounds great. What will happen to my seed? Mm-hmm. He said, well, they'll put it in a lockbox and they'll never let it out. And he said, well, then I don't want to do it. And the university lecturer said, well, you might as well anyway, because if they don't put it in a lockbox and throw away the key, you are going to have to. And the student said, what do you mean? And he said, well, more than half of our funding comes from this pharmaceutical company who's making us this financial offer, which means that the technologies and the equipment that you've been using for the last 3 years already belong to them, which means they own enough of what you've created before you even create it, that whatever comes out of your brain, they already have enough rights to make sure you can't sell it unless they want you to. So I put all these things together and I see fracking as part of something much bigger. Yep. But I also see that if people in our country let fracking take hold, mm-hmm. it will be a sign to the powers that be that they can do anything they want with us, and we must not let them think that. It's not true. But unfortunately, I had a couple of people on Facebook earlier today saying, oh, good luck with your campaign. And I'm like, it's not my campaign, it's our campaign. What's wrong with your legs? If nothing else, take my YouTube video and send it out to everyone you know. It's a call to action for them to come to Balcombe. Not because Balcombe is so important, but because Balcombe is an excellent place for people to gather to say frack off, not just to frackers, because once fracking is over, there will be something else that we will have to fight against. Mm-hmm. And we are going to have to continue to fight for our freedoms until we have them in our own hands.
So if people want to support you guys down there, what's the best way to go about doing it?
They can take some of the videos that have been coming out. If they want a good example of one, if they go onto Google and type in fracking horror Balcombe, they'll find very close to the top a short video that I made, which is a little bit of an example of what's going on here, a little bit of an introduction to what fracking is with some nice pictures. I'm not a filmmaker, but it's quite a snazzy little documentary, gripping music and still images flying past. But it is catchy, and it's got 15,000 hits in 3 days.
Yep.
So it, I wouldn't call that viral yet. You can help with that, can't you?
I am indeed.
So there's that, but more powerful than that is for them to come to Balcombe. And not just come to Balcombe. What they want to do is they want to imagine themselves taking an emergency holiday, phoning the boss up and saying, I've got to take the next 4 days off work, I'm sorry. Say that you're sick, say whatever. Because if you say I want to go to a protest, I don't think your boss will be too happy about that. And then you get your camping gear and you imagine that you're going for a very nice camping holiday. And the thing is, that is actually what it will be. When you arrive at the site, you've got this very large main road with technically, usually very fast cars going along. That's really not happening at the moment. And there are probably about 50 or 60 people now, or 50 or 60 tents, I would say, and about 100 cars, all up and down the actually quite wide grass verges on both sides of the road, to the left and the right of the entrance to Balcombe Estate. There's a sound system. There's 2 sound systems, actually, I think there now. There's a kitchen, a cooking area, tents, provisions are being provided, are coming onto site every day. People from the village are coming down. But the importance now is to make sure that the crew who are on the ground at night time is strengthened, which means there's 2 things we need to do. We need to keep the ground crew strong. This is one thing that we had to bring up today. A lot of people have been arrested, and the ones who've been arrested are the hardcore protesters. When someone gets arrested, they won't get charged, but they will be told that they're not allowed back on site. We've lost some of our strongest protesters. We've still got a lot of decent people, but with the fracking now, well, not fracking, sorry, the drilling started. Drilling started on 2 days ago. And this farmer across the road who thinks it's fun to spray manure and shoot his gun off all night, they're having broken sleep, and they're not going anywhere, but they do need support. So I would say to people, whether you decide you want to come down for 20 minutes or half a day Bring your children. There's a children's area. There are storytellers coming every day. They've even cordoned off the children's area so that when the big lorries come along, and it can be quite scary where a lot of protesters will stand in front of the lorry, the police will have to move them out of the way, the lorry then goes past, someone might get arrested if they're silly. Ultimately, if the police says move, and you move, you won't get arrested. They don't really want to arrest anybody. They're not looking for trouble. The police. I mean, I can't spell it out enough. I think they are doing an amazing job, and I think they have an incredibly hard job, especially in the face of not too many, I hope, but certainly a few protesters are incredibly vitriolic towards the police. Don't tell them anything. The fact is, these police are our brothers and sisters. And when they wear blue, they belong to the system. And that is unfortunate. But, go on.
I was going to say, so how do people keep up with what's going on down there?
There's a Facebook group which is very informative called Frack Free Sussex.
Okay.
That's probably the best place to go, actually. That has absolutely up and coming news all through the day.
Cool. And I have to say, the YouTube is basically now having a number of videos added almost on a daily basis.
Yeah, I think the YouTube channel is called Frack Off UK, I think.
Right. Okay. Absolutely brilliant. So, would you like to give us all an example of your poetry before we go?
I would love to. Okay. Well, in light of what we've been talking about today, fracking, conspiracy theories, conspiracy facts, I think I'm going to tell you a poem called Friend or Foe.
Fantastic.
NASA says the planet's safe, that there's no need to worry, and yet the world seems poised for change and in a massive hurry. America is sending troops to fight the Middle East. The convicts at Guantanamo have still not been released. Financial stocks are falling fast. Dollar, euro, pound. Questions in the sky and yet no answers on the ground. Is Elenin the sign the Hopi elders call Kachina? Is Obama African or half Egyptian, half hyena? Was 9/11 an inside job to push the Patriot Act? How many other cities in the world will be attacked? What exactly is a frack? Is their agenda clean? Are they putting poisonous liquids in our rivers and our stream? Is it true that HIV is not a real disease? Was the lunar landing staged? Will someone tell me, please? I do not mean to sound like a freak or a fanatic, and I know I have this tendency to lean towards dramatic, but something really isn't right upon our little home. We can hide ourselves in incense, dreadlocks, build a geodome, but something's coming, something big. Will aliens arrive? Do we all have to go to Denver Airport to survive? Is Queen Elizabeth a frog? Is David Icke insane? Do the Anunnaki want to flush our spirit down the drain? If the end is near, then should I stop watching porn? As we near galactic zero, will we be reborn? Why do they put fluoride in the water that we drink? Why did they ban magic mushrooms? What do people think? When I look around, I see a system near collapse. But mostly I'm not scared because I know the truth. Perhaps. It's not a guarantee, and it may not work for you, but I'd like to share it now if you're prepared to hear me through. I know that I've been ranting, but I've got a point to make. This is only my opinion, but it makes me feel awake. None of this is relevant. All these epic questions. No one has the answers. At our best, we have suggestions. The future isn't written. It is ours to craft and shape. It makes no difference if we came from alien or ape. The world could blow apart, or we could be enslaved by a microchip that switches off if we're not well behaved. The golden age could start today, soft and slow to tease us. It could turn out that we're immortal. That would surely please us. But whether it's a suitcase nuke, a riddle, or a lie, the price for being human is the body seems to die. But body death is not the end. This life is just a fraction of what's really going on in this cosmic chain reaction. The earth is rising constantly to meet a new vibration, a density that's bringing forth the age of co-creation. I think we're all rising with it. Does this feel true? The end times are aligning us so we can all get through. I think the age of separation's coming to an end. The cosmic heart is waking. Intuition is our friend. So though we're still perplexed by questions, ego-driven doubt, the ego is a tool that I could not do without. When I let my heart's vibration tell my ego gently that I do not need a bigger penis or to drive a Bentley, it also tells my ego that its help is now required, and please to stop this fighting, as we're all a little tired. Heart can drive the instrument I call the human being. Ego can co-navigate and help the heart with seeing. Heart can help the ego feel, always be in flow, and together they will co-create the world I wish to know. When I think of life like this, those questions do not matter. Answered questions only serve the need for ego chatter. The truth is that we do not need to know the ins and outs. All we need to do is let the heart dispel our doubts.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Today I've had performance poet Simon Welsh with me, who...
Could I leave you with, could I do one final thought?
Go on then.
It's called 100th Monkey Syndrome. We've been talking about quite a lot of dark things today, yeah. And if people are listening to this, I really want them to feel the uplift of what is really going on at the moment on our planet. And the 100th Monkey Syndrome is this. Go. There's 100 monkeys on an island. One day a monkey accidentally drops a little twig into a hole in a log, and when he pulls it out, it's got bugs all over it, and he thinks, ooh, yummy, yummy, yummy bugs for a monkey, and he eats them. And another monkey sees him doing that and works out how to stick a bit of twig into a log, into a hole, and pull it out, and there's bugs on there. And they all start to copy each other. And when the 100th monkey gets it, on island number 2, 5 miles across the ocean, all 100 monkeys on that island spontaneously get it straight away. Inexplicably. That is where we are. We don't need the whole world. We just need 100 monkeys. And we are so close. That is what I wanted to finish with.
Superb. Thank you very much. Today I've had,
thank you.
I've had performance poet Simon Welsh on with me. He's from the Brighton area, Balcombe, over in West Sussex in the UK. They're having drilling started by the monster I've started to call Quadzilla. And in all honesty, they're going to wreck our water supplies. They're playing with health and well-being. They pump chemicals in like hydrochloric acid, ammonia, polyacrylamide, ethylene glycol. The lot, it releases radioisotopes and methane. It is an absolute danger. If you can support these guys, you absolutely should. And you should get onto Frack Off and start supporting those guys as well, because it's not just happening here. They've got licenses to start across the UK and Ireland. So let's start getting our communities involved with this. Thank you very much, Simon.
Thank you.